Today we're covering a straight up classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's a classic for a reason. The principles and techniques in this book are quite often common sense that is rarely used but is shockingly effective. I mean, some of this stuff might as well be a Jedi mind trick. I absolutely love the fact that although it's not a Christian book, it does a better job at teaching Christian principles and values than most Christian books do. Although Dale Carnegie wrote this book mostly from observing human nature, it feels like he could have just ripped off half of these ideas from the Bible. And yet he teaches these ideas with insights and applications that you have probably never heard anywhere else. So come on, let's get into it. Hey, what's up, my people? We're here building up ourselves and each other. We refuse to conform to this world. We renew our minds and we are transformed. We are renegades because normal is just not good enough. These first few chapters cover 3 principles that he called fundamental techniques in handling people. Now, you probably feel like, hey, that sounds a little manipulative. And you'd be right. In the book, the author Dale Carnegie makes it very clear that these principles can easily be counterfeited and used as tools to manipulate others. The difference between that and what he teaches is that we're supposed to integrate these ideas into who we are as a person. And we shouldn't just be using them as tools to get what we want. One reason for that is that it works in the long term. Because eventually people will realize that you're not being genuine with it. Once they realize that you fooled them, they will resent you for it. Duh. Even gullible people will eventually figure out that you've been kind of lying to them. And they will always think of you as a liar. So yeah, don't do that. Do the work and become a genuine person. Principle 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. This is pretty straightforward. People don't like being criticized or condemned. And no one likes a complainer. But as we get a little deeper into it, there's one thing we need to understand. And that would be, people can justify anything. There's a saying in the law enforcement community that there are no guilty people in prison. It's not that they didn't do it. It's that everyone has a story and they have some kind of justification for their actions. People are capable of justifying anything. And people have a switch that flips to defend themselves the moment they feel like someone is accusing them of something. It's just human nature. Now, we should work on that in ourselves, but when we're dealing with other people, it would be stupid to put ourselves in a situation where we're fighting against their human nature. And remember, without the possibility of forgiveness and reconciliation, there's no real incentive to admit wrongdoing. Now, as Christians, God offers us forgiveness and reconciliation if we confess our wrongdoings. So we always have incentive to confess our wrongdoing. So if we're in a situation where we have to address something like this, then we should lead with the idea of forgiveness and reconciliation. The second aspect of this idea of avoiding criticism is that positive reinforcement is far more effective than punishment for behavior modification. It has been scientifically proven. Like it says in the book, criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. Criticism is dangerous because it wounds a person's precious pride, hurts his sense of importance, and arouses resentment. And the resentment that criticism engenders can demoralize employees, family members, and friends, and still not correct the situation that has been condemned. Now, this does not mean that punishment or criticism is never appropriate, but that it should be done gently and with that person's feelings and best interests in mind. And it should also be done by someone who has already established rapport with the person so that they're likely to listen and that the relationship is likely to survive this event. The next aspect of this principle is actually from the Bible. Judge not that you be not judged. Now, I feel like this passage is usually misunderstood to mean that we will be judged by God for judging other people. But Jesus uses 3 illustrations to explain what he meant by this. And the third illustration is, do not throw your pearls before pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. That's Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. Meaning, if you give godly advice to someone who didn't ask for it and will most likely not take it well, they will most likely resent the godly truth that you offered and look for a way to hurt you. If you judge them, they will find a way to judge you. So this idea in action would look like us not condemning or being condescending towards people, because it stirs up resentment that will quickly destroy whatever rapport we have with them. Now, sometimes you will have a strong urge to tell someone off and really just let them know just how much they screwed up. The book offers a technique that helps with that. Write them a letter and just let them have it. Don't hold back. I mean, really let them have it. And then just don't mail it. It really lets you vent and express your emotions freely without destroying your relationship with somebody. Apparently, Abraham Lincoln has been known to have used this technique. After you have had time to cool off, you can go back and read your letter. You'll probably be glad you didn't say these things to anyone. But there might still be some things that should still be said. Now that you've had time to cool down, you can find a way to say these things that are likely to be accepted and are not likely to be offensive. Exercising the self-control to not criticize, condemn, or complain is contrary to human nature, but it is a sign of a mature adult because most people don't have the self-control to do this. Like I said in the book, any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. A great man shows his greatness, said Carlyle, by the way he treats little men. Principle number 2. Make them feel important with honest and sincere appreciation. John Dewey, the American philosopher, said that the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important. This is definitely an interesting idea, but the longer you think about it, the more sense it makes. William James said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. Between these two desires, they can be used to describe our motivations in pretty much anything we do. Now, I like how the author puts this idea. If you tell me how you get your feeling of importance, I'll tell you who you are. Because that determines your character, and that is the most significant thing about you. I'll tell you what. Find a way to ask something like this on a first date. What do you do that makes you feel important? Or what do you feel like you are most often appreciated for? You will learn more about them as a person than most people learn in 20 dates. So, what does this all have to do with how we should treat other people? Well, let's think about ourselves for just a second. Think about our own insecurities and how much impact a compliment or appreciation makes on that anxiety. How would you feel about and what kind of bond would you form with someone who consistently shows you sincere appreciation and makes you feel important? I'd imagine you'd feel pretty comfortable and safe with them and have a decent amount of camaraderie with them. Now, using the golden rule that Jesus taught us, if we would like to be treated that way, then let's treat the other people in our life just that way. Now, as we're doing that, beware of flattery. It's insincere and it's a counterfeit. People will eventually spot that, and it will come back to bite you. Remember, the appreciation we're talking about here is an honest assessment of something we genuinely admire in someone. If we're just using this as a tool to get what we want, then it will become insincere and a counterfeit. What we need is a new way of life. We need to build daily habits of seeing the best in people and calling that out. Letting people know that we see their potential and how far they've already come. Now, principle 3, stir up an earnest desire. This chapter starts out with a fishing story. He talks about his personal preference is strawberries and cream, but when he's trying to interest a fish, he baits the hook with a worm because the fish is only interested in what the fish likes, not what humans like. So bait the hook with what interests the fish. Don't be so self-centered. If you want to be interesting to someone, talk about that person's likes and dislikes. You will have some of the easiest and most engaged conversations, and all you have to offer is some enthusiasm and a few good questions, and then just let them go. They will walk away from the interaction thinking you're one of the most skilled and interesting conversationalists they've ever met. Now, what if you need a favor or if you need them to do something for you? You should ask yourself, how can I make this person want to do it? Henry Ford once said, if there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as your own. That's so simple, right? Just look at it from their perspective and then your perspective and find something that is helpful for you both. As common sense as it is, you will rarely see this in practice. Human nature is to be self-focused. In both business and personal relationships, people tend to have their own desires first in their minds. If you want to appeal to them, talk about their needs and desires before you talk about your own. There are so many self-centered people in the world that someone genuinely willing to serve the needs of others has a competitive advantage in both business and relationships. This style of thinking is beneficial to everyone since you are considering their needs as well as your own. People will naturally like you better because they feel like you are looking out for them and their interests. The book quotes Professor Overstreet. First, arouse in the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him, and he who cannot walks a lonely way. If you can learn the skill of understanding the other person's point of view and finding where your interests coincide, then everyone will want to help you because you are helping them. Okay, all right, good stuff. Let's recap here. Principle 1, don't criticize or condemn because everyone hates it when you do that. Principle number 2, show sincere appreciation because people like it when you do that. Principle number 3, consider other people's desires and interests. Just because we're in a game doesn't mean we can't be on the same team. Next week, we will be covering the next portion of the book, which is 6 ways to make people like you. We'll see you then. Renegade out.